Standing outside that locked beach house last August, watching through salt-stained windows as my children pressed their faces against the glass, I finally understood the depth of my family's betrayal. For 15 summers, Mom claimed there wasn't enough space for my small family while somehow accommodating my sister, Jessica's husband Brad, and their 4 children in what I'd been told was a cramped 4-bedroom cottage. Jessica's words still echoed in my ears from that morning's phone call. Maybe if you had a real job instead of playing with computer graphics, you could afford your own vacation, Susie. My 8-year-old daughter Emma had asked why we couldn't swim with her cousins, and I had no answer that wouldn't shatter her innocent heart. But that humiliation became my turning point, because 3 weeks later I did something that would change everything forever. The exclusion pattern started 5 years ago when I divorced Derek, my manipulative ex-husband who had controlled every aspect of our finances and made me feel incompetent about money. Mom owns this sprawling beach house in Outer Banks, North Carolina, a property she inherited from my grandfather William when I was 12. Every Memorial Day weekend, like clockwork, she'd call with the same rehearsed speech about limited accommodations and how the house could barely fit Jessica's growing family. "You know how tight things are, honey," Mom would say in that apologetic tone that never quite sounded genuine. "Brad's father, Harold, is getting up there in years, and with Jessica's 4 little ones, we're already bursting at the seams. Maybe next year we can work something out." Next year never came. Jessica's family of 6, plus Brad with his luxury car dealership success, plus Harold with his distinguished silver beard and expensive golf clubs, somehow all squeezed into what Mom described as a modest coastal retreat. Meanwhile, my children Emma and Tyler spent their summers at home watching their cousins' beach vacation photos flood social media while we made the best of our small apartment's community pool. I work as a freelance graphic designer building brands and creating visual identities for small businesses across the Southeast. The work feeds my creative soul, but the income fluctuates with client demands. After Derek left me with nothing but debt and shattered confidence, rebuilding felt like climbing Mount Everest in flip-flops. Every project was a battle to prove my worth, every payment a small victory toward independence. The truth about Mom's deception came through pure accident last spring. I was rushing to finish a logo design for a restaurant client when my phone rang. Expecting the client, I answered without checking the caller ID. "Mrs. Harrison, this is Carlos from Coastal Property Maintenance," said a voice, thick with a Hispanic accent. "Just calling to confirm tomorrow's inspection of all 8 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms at the Outer Banks property. The owner requested a full assessment before summer season." My breath caught. 8 bedrooms. "Yes, ma'am, beautiful house. Been maintaining it for 12 years now. That oceanfront master suite with the private balcony is something special, and those 2 guest wings with their own kitchenettes make it perfect for big family gatherings. Never seen anything quite like it." I sat frozen, my mouse hovering over the graphic design that suddenly seemed meaningless. 8 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, 2 guest wings. For 12 years, I'd believed Mom's story about cramped quarters and impossible logistics. "I think you have the wrong number," I whispered. "Oh, my mistake. Looking for Margaret Harrison about the beach house maintenance." Margaret Harrison, my mother, the woman who'd spent 5 years telling me there wasn't enough room while sitting on a property that could house 20 people comfortably. After Carlos hung up, I stared at my computer screen for an hour, processing the magnitude of the lie. This wasn't about space limitations or family logistics. This was deliberate exclusion, carefully orchestrated and maintained through years of elaborate deception. Every summer's disappointment, every explanation to my children about why we couldn't join the family vacation, every moment of feeling like a financial burden had been built on a foundation of calculated dishonesty. The betrayal cut deeper than any financial struggle I'd endured. Money problems were temporarily solvable through hard work and determination. but this kind of emotional manipulation disguised as practical limitations and delivered with fake sympathy revealed a level of family cruelty I'd never imagined possible. That evening, I called Mom back, my heart pounding as I searched for courage to confront decades of lies. "Hi, sweetie," she answered cheerfully. "How are my precious grandchildren?" "Mom, I need to ask you something about the beach house." A pause. "What about it, dear? How many bedrooms does it actually have?" Another pause longer this time. "Well, it depends on how you count. Some of those rooms are quite small, and with Harold's mobility issues, we need ground floor access, and Jessica's children require supervision. So the practical space is really much more limited than you might think." The careful non-answer told me everything. She knew I'd discovered the truth, and even caught red-handed, she couldn't bring herself to acknowledge the deception directly. "Carlos from Coastal Property Maintenance mentioned 8 bedrooms, I said quietly. The silence stretched so long I wondered if the call had dropped. "Susie, honey, you have to understand. Family dynamics are complicated. It's not just about bedroom counts." "Then what is it about Mom?" But she'd already hung up, leaving me with a dial tone and the crystal clear understanding that my exclusion from family vacations had nothing to do with space and everything to do with decisions I wasn't supposed to question. The confrontation I'd been dreading came 6 weeks later at Mom's 70th birthday party held in the banquet room of Riverside Country Club. The venue buzzed with relatives I rarely saw, all dressed in their finest, while sharing stories of successful careers and exotic travel. I wore my best dress, a simple navy blue, piece I'd bought 3 years ago for client presentations, feeling increasingly out of place among the designer clothing and expensive jewelry that marked financial prosperity I'd never achieved. Jessica looked stunning in a cream-colored silk blouse and tailored slacks that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her auburn hair was professionally styled in loose waves that caught the light perfectly, and her makeup was applied with the precision that comes from regular salon visits. Brad stood beside her, impeccably groomed in his charcoal gray suit, discussing investment portfolios with Uncle Richard, while sipping aged whiskey from crystal glasses. Their 4 children, Madison, Hunter, Peyton, and Reagan, were dressed like miniature socialites. The girls in matching pink dresses with white patent leather shoes. The boys in pressed khakis and button-down shirts that probably cost more than Emma and Tyler's entire school wardrobes combined. They moved through the party with practiced confidence, shaking hands with adults and speaking in polite, measured tones that suggested extensive coaching in social etiquette. I found myself in Mom's kitchen during dessert service, helping stack dirty plates and wrap leftover cake, while the party continued in the main room. The familiar sounds of family laughter and conversation filtered through the doorway, punctuated by the clink of silverware against china and the rustle of gift wrap being opened. Still playing the helpful daughter role, I see." Jessica's voice cut through my thoughts as she entered the kitchen, wine glass in hand. I looked up from the sink where I'd been rinsing serving platters, just trying to help Mom with cleanup. "How noble." Jessica's tone carried a sharpness that made me pause. She leaned against the granite countertop, her silk blouse catching the overhead light. I've been wondering when you'd finally figure it out." "Well, figure what out?" "The beach house situation, the room limitations, the whole carefully orchestrated exclusion that's kept your little family from cramping our vacation style for the past 5 years." My hands stilled in the soapy water. "What are you talking about?" Jessica took a long sip of her wine, her eyes never leaving mine. "Oh, come on, Susie. You're not that naive. Did you really think it was about bedroom availability?" The kitchen suddenly felt smaller, the warm air thick with tension and the lingering scent of birthday cake frosting. "Mom said there wasn't enough space." "Mom says whatever I tell her to say." Jessica's laugh was sharp and brittle. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing it would be to have Brad's business associate see our family's charitable case? These are people who own multiple vacation homes whose children attend private schools that cost more than your annual income. The last thing we need is your discount store wardrobe and your kids' obvious financial disadvantages, reminding everyone that not all of us have achieved the same level of success. The words hit like physical blows. I gripped the edge of the sink to steady myself. You deliberately convinced Mom to exclude us. I protected the family's reputation. Jessica straightened her voice, gaining confidence. Brad's clients expect a certain standard when they join our vacations. They're looking at multi-million-dollar car purchases, forming business partnerships worth more than you'll see in a lifetime. Having your little struggling family around with your thrift store clothing, and your children asking questions about why they can't have the same privileges as their cousins would be a constant reminder that not everyone in our family has managed to achieve financial stability. I turned to face her, fully water dripping from my hands onto the marble floor. Those are my children you're talking about. And they're sweet kids, don't get me wrong. But Emma and Tyler represent a lifestyle that makes people uncomfortable. When Brad's associates see successful families enjoying luxury vacations, they associate that success with our dealership brand. When they see families struggling to afford basic vacation expenses, it raises questions about the kind of people we associate with the kind of values we represent. The casual cruelty in her voice, the matter-of-fact way she discussed my children as embarrassments to be hidden, revealed a level of calculated manipulation I'd never imagined from my own sister. So you convinced Mom that excluding us was protecting the family. I convinced Mom that maintaining certain standards was important for everyone's future prosperity. Brad's business connections have opened doors for Harold's retirement investments, provided networking opportunities for several cousins, and created a level of social capital that benefits the entire extended family. Your presence would have complicated those relationships unnecessarily. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see Mom laughing with Aunt Carol, her face bright with birthday joy, while completely unaware of the devastating conversation happening 20 feet away. Or perhaps she was aware and simply chose to remain safely distant from the uncomfortable truth of what she'd enabled. And Mom just went along with this. Jessica shrugged. Mom wants the family to be successful. She understands that sometimes difficult decisions have to be made for the greater good. Keeping you away from our vacation gatherings wasn't personal, Susie. It was practical. But the smile playing at the corners of Jessica's mouth told a different story. This was personal, deeply and intentionally personal, wrapped in justifications about family reputation and business connections. Besides, Jessica continued swirling her wine in its crystal glass, it's not like you were contributing anything meaningful to those vacations anyway, while the rest of us were networking and building relationships that benefit everyone. You would have been focused on penny pinching and making everyone uncomfortable with constant reminders about budget limitations. This arrangement worked better for everyone involved. Everyone except my children. Your children need to learn that privileges are earned, not given. Maybe if you'd focused more on building a real career instead of playing with computer graphics and calling it a business, they could enjoy the same advantages as their cousins. The world doesn't owe anyone a vacation just because they want one. The kitchen fell silent, except for the distant sounds of party conversation and the steady drip of water from the faucet I'd forgotten to turn off completely. Jessica finished her wine and set the empty glass on the counter with a sharp clink that seemed to punctuate her dismissal of my family's worth. I should get back to the party, she said, smoothing her silk blouse. Brad's discussing a potential partnership with the Henderson family, and these conversations require careful management. You understand? She paused at the kitchen doorway, turning back with an afterthought that carried the weight of final judgment. For what it's worth, Susie, I hope you can eventually build something stable for Emma and Tyler. They deserve better than constantly wondering why they can't have what their cousins take for granted. Children notice these differences more than you might think. Then she was gone, leaving me alone with dirty dishes and the crushing realization that my family's exclusion hadn't been a matter of logistics or unfortunate circumstances. It had been a deliberate campaign to erase us from family memories, orchestrated by the sister I'd spent a lifetime loving and executed by the mother I'd spent 40 years trusting. The sound of birthday celebration continued from the next room while I stood in that kitchen, finally understanding that the cruelest betrayals often come wrapped in justifications that almost sound reasonable, delivered by people who've convinced themselves that their selfishness serves a greater good. The truth about my children's secret sacrifice came 3 days after Mom's birthday party, when I discovered Emma hiding something behind her bedroom bookshelf. I'd been looking for her library book to return it before the late fees accumulated when I noticed a small pink piggy bank wedged between her collection of fairy tale stories and chapter books about horses. "Emma, sweetie, what's this?" She looked up from her coloring book, her 8-year-old face immediately flushing with the guilt that comes from being caught with a secret. Her brown eyes, so much like my own, darted between me and the piggy bank as if she was calculating whether she could trust me with whatever truth she'd been keeping. "It's nothing, Mommy." But the weight of the ceramic pig told a different story. This wasn't empty or filled with the occasional quarter from tooth fairy visits. This was heavy with purpose and sacrifice that no 8-year-old should have to understand. I sat cross-legged on her bedroom carpet, surrounded by the cheerful chaos of stuffed animals and art supplies that marked her childhood innocence. "Emma, you know you can tell me anything, right?" Her lower lip trembled as she set down her purple crayon. "Are you going to be mad?" "I could never be mad at you for trying to help, but I need to understand what you've been doing." She crawled across the carpet and carefully extracted the piggy bank from its hiding place, cradling it against her chest, like it contained something infinitely precious. "Tyler and I have been saving money to help you buy a vacation." The simple statement hit me like a physical blow. I reached for her small hands, feeling the ceramic pig's smooth surface warmed by her nervous grip. "Oh, sweetie, what do you mean?" "We know vacations cost lots of money," she said in that matter-of-fact way children have of explaining complex situations they shouldn't have to understand. "And we know you work really hard, but sometimes there's not enough left over for extra things. So we decided to help." Tyler appeared in the doorway as if summoned by some twin telepathy that exists between siblings who've learned to rely on each other when the adult world becomes confusing. At 10 years old, he carried himself with the seriousness of a child who'd taken on responsibilities beyond his years. "We weren't trying to be sneaky, Mom," he said, settling beside us on the carpet. "We just wanted to surprise you when we had enough." Emma carefully opened the piggy bank's rubber stopper, and coins began spilling onto the pink carpeting with small metallic sounds that represented months of childhood sacrifice. Quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies, mixed with crumpled dollar bills that had been smoothed flat and carefully folded. "How long have you been saving this?" "Since last summer," Tyler said, "when we saw the pictures of Madison and Hunter at the beach house building those huge sandcastles and riding the wave runners. Emma really wanted to build sandcastles with our cousins." "I've never built a real sandcastle," Emma added quietly. "The sandbox at the park isn't the same. The sand doesn't stick together right, and there's no ocean to fill the moat." I watched them count their treasure, their small fingers sorting coins into neat piles while they explained their elaborate savings strategy with the kind of detailed planning that revealed how long they'd been thinking about this problem. "We stopped buying lunch at school on Fridays," Tyler explained. "The cafeteria pizza isn't that good anyway, and we can pack sandwiches from home. That saved us $3.50 every week." "And I've been doing extra chores for Mrs. Peterson next door," Emma added. "She pays me 50 cents every time I help her carry groceries from her car. Her arthritis makes it hard for her to lift heavy bags." Tyler reached into his backpack and pulled out a spiral notebook filled with his careful handwriting. I calculated how much money we need for budget hotel rooms near the beach house. If we get a place about 10 miles away, it costs about $79 per night. And if we stay for 5 nights, like Cousin Madison told me they do, that's $395 plus tax. The mathematical precision broke my heart. My 10-year-old son had researched vacation costs with the dedication of an adult, planning a major purchase, while his 8-year-old sister had taken on additional work to contribute to their family's happiness. We also made friendship bracelets to sell at school, Emma said proudly. The girls in my class really like the ones with the rainbow patterns. I charge $2 each, and I've sold 12 so far. I looked down at the money scattered across the carpet. One's fives and coins that represented weeks of skipped lunches, extra chores, and entrepreneurial creativity from children who should have been focused on homework and playground games instead of family financial planning. How much do you have saved? Tyler consulted his notebook with the seriousness of a bank accountant. $137.43. We're about 2/3 of the way to our goal. Our goal, $200, Emma said. Tyler figured out that if we have $200 to give you, plus what you already save from your work, maybe it would be enough to afford a vacation hotel near Grandma's beach house. The innocence of their plan, the mathematical hope that their small savings could bridge the gap between exclusion and inclusion, revealed how completely they misunderstood the real reasons behind our family's vacation isolation. They believed our absence was purely financial, a problem that could be solved through enough childhood sacrifice and creative budgeting. Tyler pulled out another folded paper from his notebook. I wrote down all the fun things we want to do at the beach. Building sandcastles with Cousin Madison, learning to surf with Cousin Hunter, looking for seashells with Cousin Peyton, and maybe having a campfire on the beach where we roast marshmallows and tell stories. Emma leaned against my shoulder, her voice growing soft with longing. Madison told me the beach house has a swing on the front porch that looks right at the ocean. She said you can sit there in the morning and watch dolphins swim by while you eat breakfast. I dream about that sometimes. The weight of their hope pressed against my chest like a physical ache. These children had spent months believing that their small sacrifices could purchase admission into a family circle that had deliberately excluded us for reasons having nothing to do with money. And Tyler taught me how to swim better at the community pool, Emma continued. He said I need to be ready for ocean waves, which are different from pool water. We've been practicing every week, so I won't be scared when we finally get to go to the real beach. I pulled both children closer, feeling the warmth of their small bodies against mine while processing the magnitude of their misplaced optimism. They'd been preparing for a vacation that would never come, saving money to solve a problem that couldn't be purchased, and maintaining hope in the face of a family system designed to exclude them permanently. Mom, Tyler said carefully, are we getting close enough to afford the hotel? I could try to find more extra chores in the neighborhood. Mr. Johnson said he might pay me to wash his car if I'm really careful not to scratch it. The question hung in the air like a prayer from children who'd never learned that some doors remain locked, regardless of how much money you offer, that some forms of rejection can't be overcome through good behavior and financial contribution. Looking at their expectant faces, surrounded by the evidence of their months of sacrifice and planning, I realized that Jessica's cruelty extended far beyond adult feelings. My children had been watching their cousins' privileged vacation experiences while secretly believing that their own worthiness depended on their ability to contribute financially to their family's happiness. You two are the most generous, thoughtful children in the world, I said, my voice thick with emotions too complex for them to fully understand. But you know what? You shouldn't have to buy your way into family vacations. Families include each other because they love each other, not because everyone can afford to contribute the same amount. But if we help with money, maybe Grandma will have space for us. Emma said with the logical innocence that makes childhood heartbreak so devastating. And in that moment, sitting on my daughter's bedroom floor, surrounded by their carefully saved coins and handwritten vacation plans, I made a decision that would change everything. My children would never again believe that their value to our family depended on their financial contribution. They would never again sacrifice their childhood allowances to purchase inclusion that should have been given freely. But more than that, they would learn that their mother wasn't the financial failure their aunt and grandmother had painted her to be. They deserved to understand that exclusion from family privileges had nothing to do with their worth or our resources, and everything to do with decisions made by adults who'd forgotten what family really means. The revelation about my true financial standing compared to Jessica's came through pure chance 2 weeks after discovering the children's piggy bank. I was grabbing coffee at downtown Charlotte's newest artisan cafe when Marcus Thompson approached my corner table, his face lighting up with recognition. "Susie Harrison, I thought that was you, Marcus Thompson from Thompson and Associates." I knew Marcus as Brad's business partner in several luxury car dealership ventures, though we'd only met briefly at family gatherings where I'd tried to remain invisible among the successful relatives. He was a tall man in his early 50s with premature gray hair and the confident bearing that comes from decades of successful business negotiations. "Hi, Marcus. How are things going?" "Mind if I sit? I've been hoping to run into you somewhere outside family events." This surprised me. In my experience, Brad's associates barely acknowledge my existence at family gatherings, treating me as part of the backdrop rather than a potential conversation partner. Marcus settled into the chair across from me, his expression growing serious as he leaned forward. "I need to ask you something, and I hope you won't take this the wrong way. Are you aware of Brad's current financial situation?" The question caught me off guard. I don't really know much about Brad's business. Why? "Because I'm concerned about your sister and those kids. Brad's been asking everyone in his network about potential investors, and the conversations are getting increasingly desperate. I'm talking about someone who's about 6 weeks away from losing everything." I set down my coffee cup, processing this information against everything I thought I knew about Jessica's luxurious lifestyle. "What do you mean, everything?" "The dealerships are leveraged beyond any reasonable business model. Brad borrowed against projected sales that never materialized, expanded too quickly into markets that couldn't sustain luxury car sales, and made some exceptionally poor investment choices with money that wasn't really his to risk." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed me a text message thread that painted a picture of financial desperation I never would have imagined from Brad's confident exterior. "He's been reaching out to everyone we know looking for emergency capital to prevent bankruptcy. The man is looking at losing his business, his house, probably his marriage, if Jessica finds out how bad things really are." Jessica doesn't know. From what I can tell, Brad's been maintaining their lifestyle through credit and increasingly risky financial maneuvers. Jessica's spending habits haven't changed because she has no idea they're living on borrowed time. This information reorganized everything I thought I understood about my family's financial dynamics. While I'd been painted as the struggling relative who couldn't afford vacation contributions, Jessica's family had been spiraling toward financial collapse hidden behind expensive clothing and luxury car lease payments. "Why are you telling me this?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "Because I've heard through the business community that you're doing quite well with your design work. Brad mentioned you've landed some significant corporate clients." Brad talked about my business. "He's been researching everyone in his network looking for potential investors or business partners. Your name came up in those conversations, and when I started asking around about your client base, I discovered you're working with some pretty impressive companies." The irony wasn't lost on me. While Jessica dismissed my work as playing with computer graphics, Brad had been quietly investigating my business success as a potential source of financial rescue. Marcus, can I ask you something? What exactly do you know about my client work? He smiled, enough to know that you're being far too modest about your achievements. The tech startup you designed branding for just secured 15 million in Series A funding, and your logo work is now worth a significant licensing fee every time they use it. That's not small freelance income. I stared at him, realizing that my deliberate privacy about business success had created space for family members to invent their own narrative about my financial struggles. The restaurant chain you rebranded is expanding into 12 new markets, specifically because your visual identity testing showed increased customer recognition and brand loyalty. That's not artistic dabbling, Susie. That's serious business consultation that commands serious fees. Marcus pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. This is the contact for my accountant. I think you should talk to her about investment strategies because, from what I can tell, you're sitting on assets that most people would consider generational wealth. Generational wealth. Your design portfolio includes licensing agreements with 3 Fortune 500 companies. Those aren't one-time payments, Susie. Those are ongoing revenue streams that compound annually. Add that to your consulting retainers and project fees, and you're looking at annual income that probably exceeds what most of our entire family makes combined. The coffee shop suddenly felt different, as if I was seeing my reflection in a mirror for the first time in years. I'd been so focused on day-to-day project management and client satisfaction that I'd never stepped back to calculate the actual value of what I'd built. I had no idea other people saw my work that way. The business community sees your work as exceptionally valuable. You've created brand identities that directly increased client revenue by measurable percentages. That's not common talent, and it's definitely not something that should be dismissed as a hobby. Marcus checked his watch and stood to leave. Look, I don't want to get involved in family drama, but I thought you should know the real financial picture before Brad gets desperate enough to start asking family members for money. And I thought you should understand that your business success isn't as invisible as you might think. After he left, I sat in that coffee shop for 2 hours, using my phone's calculator to add up numbers I'd never bothered to total before. Annual retainer fees from 3 major clients, licensing revenue from designs that continued generating income months after completion, project fees for brand consultations that had become the foundation for multi-million-dollar marketing campaigns. The number that appeared on my phone screen was larger than I'd ever imagined possible. Not only was I not struggling financially, I was more financially secure than most people ever become. While Jessica had been dismissing my career as inadequate for family social standards, I'd been quietly building a business empire that could fund luxury vacations for dozens of families. But more than the money, Marcus's conversation revealed how completely my family's narrative about my financial situation was built on assumptions rather than facts. They decided I was struggling because my lifestyle was modest, because I drove an older car and shopped carefully, because I didn't display wealth in ways they recognized as successful. Meanwhile, Jessica's family was maintaining an expensive facade while facing financial collapse. Brad was desperately seeking investors to prevent bankruptcy, and their children were growing up in luxury that could disappear overnight when the financial truth finally emerged. That evening, I called my business attorney to discuss asset protection and investment strategies. For the first time in years, I began thinking about money not as something to worry about, but as a tool for creating the kind of life my children deserved. And for the first time since Mom's birthday party, I started planning something that would change our family's story forever. The full scope of my financial success became clear during a meeting with my attorney, Sarah Chen, the following week. I'd been putting off this conversation for months, assuming that organizing my business assets was a luxury I couldn't afford. Sitting in her downtown Charlotte office, surrounded by law books and certificates that spoke of serious legal expertise, I finally understood how dramatically I'd underestimated my own achievements. Susie, I need you to understand something, Sarah said, spreading financial documents across her mahogany desk. What you've built isn't just a successful freelance business. This is a legitimate design empire with multiple revenue streams that most entrepreneurs spend decades trying to develop. She pointed to a chart showing my income progression over the past 3 years. The upward trajectory was so steep it looked almost fictional. Your breakthrough came when that viral social media campaign you designed for Coastal Brewing Company generated $47 million in new revenue for their client. That success led to exclusive retainer contracts with 3 major corporations who pay you annual fees just to maintain access to your creative expertise. I looked at the numbers, still struggling to connect them with my daily reality of working from my home office in sweatpants and oversized sweaters. These retainer agreements alone provide more annual income than most families see in 5 years. Add your project fees, licensing revenue from designs that continue generating profits, and consulting fees for brand development strategies, and you're looking at assets that qualify as serious wealth accumulation. Sarah pulled out another document that made my breath catch. Your licensing agreement with TechFlow Solutions is particularly valuable. Every time they use your logo design and marketing materials, product packaging, or digital platforms, you receive a percentage of their revenue. With their recent expansion into international markets, that logo is now generating passive income in 12 countries. The numbers on the page represented financial security I'd never dared imagine. During my marriage to Derek, money had been a constant source of anxiety and control. He'd managed every financial decision while making me feel incompetent about basic money management. After the divorce, I'd focused so intensely on immediate survival and rebuilding that I'd never stepped back to recognize what I was actually accomplishing. Sarah, if these numbers are accurate, why do I feel like I'm constantly struggling? Because you've been living like someone building a business instead of someone who's already built one. You've reinvested almost everything back into better equipment, professional development, and business growth. That's smart, long-term thinking. But it's also hidden your actual net worth behind operational expenses and conservative lifestyle choices. She showed me an asset evaluation that included my intellectual property portfolio, ongoing contracts, and business equipment. The total was staggering. You own the rights to designs being used by companies generating hundreds of millions in annual revenue. You've created visual identities that have become integral to major brand recognition campaigns. This isn't freelance work anymore, Susie. This is intellectual property ownership at a corporate level. But I work from home. I don't even have employees. Some of the most valuable businesses in the world operate exactly that way. You've eliminated overhead costs while maximizing creative control and profit margins. That's not a sign of small-scale operation. It's sophisticated business strategy. Sarah leaned forward, her expression growing more serious. I need to ask you something personal. Are you aware that you have more liquid assets than most people accumulate in entire careers? I shook my head, feeling like I was learning about someone else's life. Based on these contracts and revenue streams, you could purchase significant real estate, invest in other businesses, or fund major lifestyle changes without affecting your ongoing income. You've achieved the kind of financial independence that allows for major life decisions based on personal preferences rather than economic constraints. She pulled out one final document that made everything click into place. This is a property assessment for a luxury resort that came on the market last week. Serenity Shores Resort in Outer Banks, North Carolina. Prime oceanfront location, 46 rooms, full-service amenities, currently operating at a loss due to mismanagement. My heart stopped. Serenity Shores. Oh, you know it. It's been my dream vacation destination since I was a child. My family always said it was too expensive for people like us. Sarah smiled. According to your current financial position, you could purchase this property outright without significantly impacting your other investments. The asking price is $2.8 million, but the owners are motivated sellers dealing with estate issues and mounting debts. I stared at the glossy brochures showing pristine beaches, elegant suites, and infinity pools that seemed to merge with the Atlantic Ocean. This was the place I dreamed about during every summer of exclusion from family vacations, the luxury resort that represented everything my family claimed was beyond our reach. But I don't know anything about running a resort. You don't need to learn resort management, Susie. You could hire experienced managers and treat this as a real estate investment that happens to provide your family with unlimited vacation access. Or you could develop it into a creative retreat center, combining your business expertise with hospitality management. The idea began taking shape as Sarah continued explaining the financial possibilities. Not only could I afford this purchase, but owning Serenity Shores would solve my family's vacation exclusion problem permanently, while creating additional revenue streams through property management and event hosting. "There's something else you should know about this particular property," Sarah said, her voice taking on a tone that suggested additional complications. What? "The current owner is Patricia Blackwell, and according to the real estate documentation, she has some kind of historical connection to your family. The listing agent mentioned that Patricia specifically requested information about potential buyers with the last name Harrison." Patricia Blackwell. Mom had mentioned that name years ago in connection with some business dispute from the 1990s, but I'd never paid attention to the details. "Do you think there's a conflict of interest?" "I think there might be an opportunity. If Patricia Blackwell has unresolved issues with your mother, she might be motivated to sell to you at below market value just to spite whatever happened between them decades ago." Sarah gathered the documents into a neat stack and looked at me directly. "Susie, I want you to go home and think about this carefully. You have the financial resources to make decisions that could fundamentally change your family's circumstances. You could purchase luxury real estate, invest in multiple properties, or fund business ventures that most people never have the opportunity to consider. You really think I could afford to buy a resort?" "I think you could afford to buy several resorts if that's what you wanted to do. But more importantly, I think you could afford to stop letting other people define your family's worth based on their assumptions about your financial situation." That night, I sat in my home office, surrounded by client work and unfinished projects, seeing my space with completely new eyes. The expensive computer equipment I'd gradually accumulated, the professional lighting setup for client video calls, the carefully organized filing systems that tracked thousands of dollars in monthly revenue. All of this represented a business empire I'd built without recognizing its true value. My children were asleep down the hallway, dreaming innocent dreams while their mother contemplated purchasing a luxury resort that would give them access to every vacation privilege their cousins had taken for granted. Emma's piggy bank still sat on her dresser, filled with coins saved to help buy hotel rooms near a beach house owned by family members who considered us too financially inadequate for inclusion. But what struck me most powerfully wasn't the money itself. It was the realization that Jessica's dismissal of my work as inadequate had been built on complete ignorance of what I'd actually achieved. While she'd been maintaining appearances through credit and borrowed luxury, I'd been quietly building something sustainable and valuable. Tomorrow, I would call Patricia Blackwell and arrange a meeting to discuss purchasing Serenity Shores Resort. Not because I wanted to prove anything to my family, but because my children deserved to build sandcastles on their own beach, swim in their own ocean, and never again believe that vacation privileges had to be earned through childhood sacrifice. The little girl who'd been excluded from family gatherings was about to become the woman who owned the most beautiful vacation destination on the North Carolina coast. And this time, the guest list would be entirely up to me. The call to Patricia Blackwell came easier than I'd expected. Her voice carried the refined authority of someone accustomed to making significant business decisions. but underneath the professional tone, I detected something that sounded almost like anticipation. Ms. Harrison, I've been hoping someone from your family would eventually contact me about Serenity Shores, Patricia said when I explained my interest in the property. Would you be available to meet this afternoon? I think we have more to discuss than simple real estate negotiations. Driving to the resort 3 hours later, I tried to imagine what connections might exist between Patricia and my family. The coastal highway stretched ahead through pine forests and salt marshes, leading toward a destination that had represented impossible luxury throughout my entire childhood. Serenity Shores Resort appeared around a curve in the road like something from a dream. Elegant buildings cascaded down gentle slopes toward pristine beaches connected by walking paths lined with native grasses and flowering shrubs. The main lodge featured wraparound porches and floor-to-ceiling windows that captured panoramic ocean views, while individual villas dotted the landscape like jewels scattered across perfectly manicured gardens. Patricia met me in the main lodge's reception area, and I immediately understood why this woman had succeeded in business, despite whatever conflicts had existed with my family. She moved with the confident grace of someone who'd spent decades making important decisions. Her silver hair perfectly styled and her clothes suggesting wealth that didn't need to announce itself through obvious displays. You look remarkably like your mother did at your age, Patricia said as we shook hands. Same determined expression, same way of assessing everything around you before making judgments. She guided me through the resort's public spaces, pointing out amenities that exceeded every vacation fantasy I'd ever entertained. The infinity pool seemed to merge seamlessly with the Atlantic Ocean beyond, while the private beach featured white sand that stretched for nearly a mile without any other development in sight. 46 suites total, Patricia explained as we walked through gardens that belonged in luxury travel magazines, each with private balconies or patios, full kitchens, and direct access to either beach or pool areas. The staff quarters, management offices, and maintenance facilities are completely separate from guest areas, ensuring privacy and tranquility. Every detail spoke of careful planning and enormous investment. The restaurant featured a commercial kitchen that could serve 200 guests simultaneously, while the spa and fitness center offered services typically found only at international luxury destinations. Oh, Patricia, can I ask you about your connection to my family? She paused beside a fountain where koi fish swam in crystal clear water, her expression growing thoughtful. Your mother and I were business partners 30 years ago. We developed a chain of coastal bed and breakfast properties that should have made both of us quite wealthy. Margaret had family connections that provided access to prime real estate, while I had the business expertise and capital for development. What happened? Your mother decided she could manage the properties better alone. She bought out my partnership using information I'd provided about property values and development potential, then immediately implemented expansion plans we'd developed together. Within 2 years, she'd built the business into exactly what we'd originally envisioned, except I'd been completely eliminated from the profits. Patricia's voice remained calm, but I could hear decades of unresolved anger beneath the professional tone. The legal battles lasted 3 years and cost me most of my liquid assets. By the time everything was settled, Margaret had established herself as a successful independent businesswoman while I was starting over from scratch. I had no idea Mom was ever involved in business ventures. Your mother is considerably more sophisticated about money and property than she allows people to believe. The beach house you've been excluded from, that's one of the properties she developed using strategies I taught her, built with profits from partnerships I helped create. This information reorganized everything I thought I knew about Mom's financial situation. I'd always assumed her wealth came from Grandpa William's inheritance, but apparently she'd been an active business developer who'd built additional prosperity through calculated partnerships and strategic betrayals. Patricia, why are you willing to sell Serenity Shores to me? She smiled, and for the first time her expression showed genuine warmth. Because selling this property to Margaret's daughter at a price she could never afford would be the most satisfying revenge I could imagine. Your mother spent 3 decades believing she'd eliminated me from her social and business circles. Discovering that I've sold my crown jewel property to the family member she's been systematically excluding would be absolutely delicious irony. But you don't even know if I can afford it. Oh, my dear, I know exactly what you can afford. I've been following your business success for the past 2 years, ever since your logo design work started appearing in major marketing campaigns. You've built something impressive, and more importantly, you've built it through talent and determination rather than manipulation and betrayal. Patricia led me to a secluded seating area overlooking the ocean where late afternoon light turned the water into liquid gold. I'm 85 years old, confined to a wheelchair for most activities and facing medical expenses that will eventually consume whatever wealth I don't liquidate now. This property represents my life's work, but I'd rather see it owned by someone who will appreciate its beauty than leave it to be fought over by relatives who only see dollar signs. What kind of price are you thinking? The property appraised at $2.8 million last month. I'll sell it to you for $800,000, including all furnishings, staff contracts, and operational licenses. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. $800,000. With 2 conditions. First, you must take ownership within 30 days, before your mother learns about the transaction. Second, you must promise to use this property to create the kind of family memories your mother denied you throughout your childhood. The offer was so generous, it felt almost fictional, but Patricia's expression suggested complete seriousness about both the price and the timeline. There's something else you should know, Patricia continued. I've been the property management company for your mother's beach house for the past 5 years. Margaret has no idea I'm involved in maintaining the properties she's used to exclude your family from vacation gatherings. You manage Mom's beach house. Through a subsidiary company that keeps my name off the official paperwork. I've been waiting for the perfect moment to terminate that management contract, and your purchase of Serenity Shores would provide exactly the timing I've been hoping for. The complexity of Patricia's revenge plan was becoming clear. Not only would Mom discover that I'd purchased a luxury resort at a price she couldn't match, but she'd simultaneously lose access to her own vacation property through Patricia's management decisions. Patricia, this feels like I'm being used in someone else's fight. My dear, you've been used in someone else's fight for your entire life. The difference is that this time you'll benefit from the conflict instead of suffering from it. She pulled out a folder containing property documents, financial statements, and staff contracts that represented immediate ownership of everything I was seeing around us. Take these documents home and review them with your attorney. If you decide to proceed, call me within 1 week and we'll arrange the closing. But understand that once you own Serenity Shores, you'll have the power to invite whomever you choose for family gatherings while excluding anyone who's treated you poorly. Driving home that evening with the documents beside me on the passenger seat, I tried to process what had just happened. In one afternoon, I'd gone from being the excluded family member who couldn't afford vacation privileges to someone being offered ownership of the most exclusive resort on the North Carolina coast. But more than the financial opportunity, Patricia's offer represented a chance to fundamentally change the power dynamics that had shaped my family relationships for decades. Instead of begging for inclusion in other people's vacation plans, I could create my own gatherings and decide who deserved invitations based on how they'd treated my children. Emma and Tyler were waiting when I got home, full of questions about my mysterious afternoon meeting. Looking at their hopeful faces, I realized that tomorrow I would call Sarah Chen and begin the process of purchasing a resort that would give them unlimited access to everything their cousins had taken for granted. But first, I had to decide who would be welcome at our new family vacation destination, And who would learn what it felt like to be left out of gatherings they desperately wanted to attend? The meeting with Patricia's lawyer, David Green, took place in his downtown Wilmington office the following Monday morning. David was a distinguished man in his late 60s with the kind of legal expertise that comes from decades of handling complex real estate transactions for wealthy clients. Ms. Harrison Patricia has explained the unique circumstances surrounding this sale, David said as he arranged documents across his conference table. I want to make sure you understand both the exceptional nature of this offer and the strategic timing involved. Sarah Chen sat beside me, reviewing financial documents that would make this purchase possible without affecting my other investments. The numbers still felt surreal, but Sarah's confidence in my financial position was gradually becoming my own understanding of what I had achieved. The property is being sold significantly below market value for specific personal reasons, David continued. Patricia wants to ensure that your mother learns about this transaction in the most impactful way possible, which requires careful coordination of the timing. He showed me a timeline that felt like something from a military operation rather than a real estate closing. We'll structure the sale to close on June 15th, exactly 1 week before your mother's traditional beach house vacation begins. The staff transition will happen immediately, giving you operational control while your family is still making their usual vacation arrangements. What about Mom's beach house management? David smiled in a way that suggested he'd been anticipating this question. Patricia's management company will terminate their contract with your mother on June 20th, citing irreconcilable differences in property maintenance standards. Your mother will receive notice that she needs to find new property management immediately, right in the middle of vacation season, when such services are nearly impossible to secure. The coordinated nature of Patricia's revenge plan was becoming clear. Mom would lose control of her vacation property at the exact moment she discovered that her excluded daughter had purchased the most luxurious resort in the region. There's also the matter of staff transitions, David continued. Several employees currently working at your mother's beach house have expressed interest in transferring to Serenity Shores, where they'll receive better compensation and working conditions. Sarah leaned forward. Is there any legal liability involved in accepting employees from Patricia's other properties? None whatsoever. These are independent contractors who can choose their own clients. However, their departure will leave your mother's property without essential services during peak vacation season. The elegance of Patricia's strategy impressed me, despite my discomfort with being involved in such elaborate revenge planning. Every element was perfectly legal while maximizing inconvenience and embarrassment for Mom. David, what does Patricia expect from me in terms of her ongoing involvement with the resort? Patricia will retain a suite in the West Wing where she can spend her remaining years overlooking the ocean. In exchange, she'll provide consultation about resort operations and guest services, but you'll have complete operational control and ownership rights. He handed me a contract that formalized the most generous real estate transaction I'd ever imagined. The purchase price of $800,000 includes all furnishings, equipment, vehicles, boats, and existing reservations through the end of this year. You'll also inherit contracts with suppliers, service providers, and maintenance companies that will allow seamless operational continuity. Sarah reviewed the financing arrangements that would make immediate closing possible. Susie, you can complete this purchase using existing liquid assets without affecting your business operations or long-term investments. This is essentially a cash transaction that eliminates financing complications. How quickly can we close? If you sign today, we can have ownership transferred by the end of this week, David said. Patricia is extremely motivated to complete this transaction before anyone in your family becomes aware of the negotiations. The timeline felt breathtakingly fast, but the opportunity was too valuable to delay through excessive deliberation. I was being offered the chance to purchase my childhood dream destination at a fraction of its actual value. while simultaneously solving my family's vacation exclusion problem permanently. There's one additional element you should consider, David said, pulling out another document. Patricia has prepared detailed records of every vacation booking your mother's family has made over the past 5 years, including dates, guest lists, and activities. This information could be useful for planning your own family gatherings. The guest lists revealed the scope of my family's exclusion more clearly than any conversation could have accomplished. Jessica's family, Brad's business associates, Harold's retirement community friends, various cousins and their children. Dozens of people had enjoyed beach house vacations, while my children spent summers at home. Patricia also wanted you to know that several family members have inquired about booking reservations at Serenity Shores over the years. Your mother consistently told them the property was too expensive for family gatherings, but the real reason was Patricia's ownership. This meant Mom had been actively preventing family access to the resort I was about to purchase, adding another layer to the exclusion patterns that had shaped my childhood understanding of family privilege and financial limitations. Sarah completed her review of the purchase documents and looked at me directly. "Susie, this is an excellent investment opportunity, even without the personal satisfaction elements. The property will appreciate significantly over time, and the rental income potential will provide additional revenue streams for your business portfolio. And if I decide I don't want to manage resort operations, you could hire professional management companies and treat this as a passive real estate investment while maintaining family access to the property. The financial benefits exist regardless of your involvement level." David gathered the contracts into a neat stack. "The decision is entirely yours, but Patricia would like an answer by tomorrow morning. If you choose to proceed, we can have you taking ownership of Serenity Shores Resort by Friday afternoon." Driving home along the coastal highway, I thought about Emma and Tyler's reaction when they learned we would own our own beach resort instead of hoping for invitations to other people's vacation properties. They would have unlimited access to pristine beaches, luxury amenities, and family gathering spaces that exceeded every vacation fantasy they'd ever entertained. But more than fulfilling my children's dreams, this purchase would fundamentally change our family's power dynamics. Instead of being the excluded relatives who weren't quite successful enough for inclusion, we would become the family members who controlled access to the most desirable vacation destination anyone could imagine. That evening, I called Sarah Chen and told her to proceed with the purchase. By the end of the week, Susie Harrison would own Serenity Shores Resort, and my family's vacation exclusion problem would be solved forever. The only question remaining was who would receive invitations to our first family gathering, and who would discover what it felt like to be left out of celebrations they desperately wanted to attend. The invitations took me 3 days to design perfectly. As a graphic artist, I understood that presentation could be as important as content when delivering life-changing messages. Each invitation was printed on heavy cream cardstock with elegant gold lettering that suggested luxury without appearing ostentatious. "You and your family are cordially invited to a special vacation gathering June 22nd through 29th at an exclusive coastal resort. Accommodations, meals, and activities will be provided. Please respond by June 10th to confirm attendance." The mystery element was deliberate. I wanted family members to accept the invitation before learning who was hosting or where they would be staying. After years of being excluded from other people's vacation plans, I was finally creating my own gathering with complete control over the guest list. I started with Brad's father, Harold, who'd always been kind to my children despite Jessica's efforts to create family hierarchies. At 78 years old, Harold deserved to enjoy luxury accommodations without the stress of family politics that had complicated recent vacation arrangements. The invitation to Harold included a personal note: "Your kindness to Emma and Tyler has meant more to our family than you know. We hope you'll join us for a week of relaxation and family time in a beautiful setting. Next came Mom's sister Carol and her husband Frank, along with their adult children who'd been peripheral to the beach house exclusions but had never actively participated in the cruelty. Carol had always maintained friendly relationships with everyone while carefully avoiding the conflicts that Jessica created around vacation planning. For the cousins' children, I created special invitations that emphasized family fun and adventure activities. Madison Hunter, Peyton, and Reagan had been taught to see my children as less privileged relatives, but they were innocent victims of adult manipulation who deserved opportunities to build genuine relationships with Emma and Tyler. Each family group received personalized invitations that reflected their specific interests and relationship histories. Uncle Richard and Aunt Patricia got invitations mentioning fishing opportunities and golf course access. Cousin Michael's family received information about water sports and beach activities perfect for their teenage children. The most challenging invitation was to Brad himself. After learning about his financial difficulties through Marcus Thompson, I felt genuinely concerned about his family's well-being despite Jessica's years of manipulation and exclusion. Brad had been passive rather than actively cruel, allowing Jessica to orchestrate family politics while focusing on his failing business ventures. Brad, I know things have been stressful lately with business challenges. This vacation opportunity doesn't require any financial contribution from your family. Please consider joining us for a week of relaxation away from everyday pressures. By the time I finished addressing invitations, the list included 32 people spread across 8 family groups, representing almost everyone who'd been part of our extended family network except Mom and Jessica. The deliberate exclusion felt strange after a lifetime of being on the receiving end of such decisions, but it also felt like necessary justice for years of systematic cruelty toward my children. The responses began arriving within days, and every single family accepted the mysterious invitation with enthusiasm that revealed how much they'd been looking forward to vacation opportunities. Harold called personally to express his excitement about spending time with all the grandchildren, while Carol's enthusiastic thank you note mentioned how much she'd missed large family gatherings. Most surprising was the response from Jessica's children, who somehow learned about the invitations through cousin networks and called to ask if they could attend even though their parents hadn't been invited. Aunt Susie Madison told me about the vacation invitation. 12-year-old Hunter said when he called from Brad's phone. Can we come, even if Mom and Dad can't? We really want to see Emma and Tyler, and Madison said there's going to be a private beach. The conversation broke my heart because these children had no understanding of why their parents were excluded while they remained welcome. From their perspective, family vacations should include everyone, and the adult conflicts that created these divisions were incomprehensible complications that interfered with cousin relationships they valued. Hunter, you and your siblings are absolutely invited. Your mom and dad can discuss the details with your grandparents. But why aren't Mom and Dad invited? Did they do something wrong? The innocent question forced me to navigate between honest explanation and age-appropriate information that wouldn't destroy their relationships with their parents. Sometimes adults have disagreements that need to be worked out separately from family fun time. You kids shouldn't have to worry about grown-up problems. After Hunter hung up, I realized that Jessica's children would become messengers, carrying information about the vacation invitation back to their excluded parents. Jessica would learn about the family gathering through her own children's excitement, creating the exact kind of painful exclusion she'd imposed on my family for years. The following evening, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Susie, this is Jessica. I need to talk to you about this vacation you're apparently planning. Her voice carried a mixture of confusion and growing anger that told me the children had shared their excitement about receiving personal invitations to a mystery family vacation. Hi, Jessica. How are you? I'm confused about why my children are talking about vacation invitations they supposedly received from you while Brad and I seem to have been left off whatever guest list you've created. I decided to organize a family gathering for people who've been supportive of my children over the years. Supportive Susie, we're your sister and brother-in-law. We don't need to earn invitations to family events. The irony of her statement wasn't lost on me. After 5 years of systematically excluding my family from vacation gatherings, Jessica genuinely seemed to believe that family relationships guaranteed automatic inclusion regardless of how people treated each other. Jessica, I'm sure you understand that vacation planning involves difficult decisions about space limitations and guest compatibility. On space limitations, where exactly are you planning this gathering that supposedly has room for 30 people but not for your own sister? I smiled, realizing that she still had no idea about Serenity Shores Resort or my financial ability to purchase such properties. I've secured accommodations that will be perfect for the people I've chosen to invite. Chosen to invite Susie, what's gotten into you? Family vacations aren't supposed to be exclusive events where people get chosen based on your personal preferences. You're absolutely right, Jessica. Family vacations should include everyone who loves and supports each other. I'm planning exactly that kind of gathering. The phone line fell silent as Jessica processed the implications of my statement. Are you seriously excluding Brad and me from a family vacation as some kind of revenge for previous vacation arrangements? I'm including everyone who's treated my children with kindness and respect over the years. I'm sure you understand. Susie, this is ridiculous. You can't just decide to split up the family because your feelings got hurt about beach house logistics. Jessica, I need to go. The people who are invited know how to reach me if they have questions about the arrangements. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet house feeling a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Justice felt necessary after years of exclusion and manipulation, but implementing that justice required inflicting the same kind of painful exclusion I'd experienced on family members who would never fully understand why their behavior had consequences. But more than revenge, these invitations represented my children's first experience being included in family gatherings as valued participants rather than charity cases hoping for acceptance. Emma and Tyler would finally build sandcastles with their cousins, swim in pristine ocean water, and create vacation memories that belonged entirely to them. The mystery vacation would reveal itself in 10 days when our family's power dynamics changed forever and the excluded became the ones controlling access to privilege and luxury beyond anything any of us had ever experienced. The phone call that changed everything came Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing resort staff schedules in my new owner's office at Serenity Shores. Emma's excited voice bubbled through the speaker with the kind of pure joy that only children can express when sharing incredible discoveries. Mommy, guess what Madison called me today? And she asked about our princess castle. I smiled, setting down the employee handbook I'd been studying. What did you tell her? I told her about our castle by the ocean where princesses live and about the swimming pool that looks like it goes into the sea forever, and about how we have our own private beach with seashells that nobody else is allowed to take. My heart stopped. In her 8-year-old enthusiasm, Emma had just described Serenity Shores Resort to Jessica's 12-year-old daughter with the kind of detail that would make the property's luxury obvious to any adult who heard the conversation secondhand. Emma, what exactly did Madison ask you? She wanted to know where our vacation castle is and if it has room for her family too. She said her daddy's been really worried about money lately and her mommy's been crying about not being invited to family vacation this year. The innocent conversation between cousins had just revealed information I'd planned to control carefully. Through children's natural excitement about sharing good news, word about Serenity Shores was spreading through family networks faster than I'd anticipated. Did you tell Madison the name of our resort? I told her we live in a castle called Serenity Shores where mermaids come to visit and dolphins swim right up to the beach. She got really quiet and said she had to tell her daddy something important. 20 minutes later, my phone rang with Brad's number. Susie, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Brad's voice carried a seriousness I'd never heard before, stripped of the casual confidence that usually marked his conversations. What do you need to know, Brad? Did you purchase Serenity Shores Resort? The direct question eliminated any possibility of continued secrecy. Harold must have recognized the property name and confirmed its luxury reputation when Madison shared Emma's enthusiastic descriptions. Yes. Jesus Christ, Susie. Do you have any idea what that property is worth? I have some idea. Some idea that resort has been the most exclusive vacation destination on the North Carolina coast for 20 years. I've had clients ask me about booking events there, and the waiting list for reservations is typically 6 months long. I could hear the shock in his voice as he processed this information against everything he thought he knew about my financial situation. Brad, is there something specific you wanted to discuss? I wanted to discuss the fact that my children are telling everyone they've been invited to stay at a luxury resort owned by their aunt, while their parents were deliberately excluded from both the vacation and any knowledge that you could afford to purchase such a property. I invited people who've been supportive of my children. Supportive Susie. I know I haven't been perfect, but I've never been actively cruel to Emma and Tyler. Jessica handles most of the family social arrangements, and I focus on business responsibilities. Brad's voice was growing more desperate as the conversation continued. Look, I need to be honest with you about something. My business is in serious trouble. I'm facing potential bankruptcy, and I've been desperate to find solutions that don't involve destroying my family's lifestyle. When Marcus Thompson told me you were doing well with design work, I started researching your business success. You researched my business? I was hoping you might be interested in investment opportunities or partnership arrangements that could benefit both of us. What I found was that you've been building a design empire while everyone in our family was treating you like a struggling single mother who couldn't afford vacation contributions. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. While Jessica dismissed my work as inadequate for family social standards, Brad had been secretly investigating my business success as a potential solution to his financial crisis. Oh, Brad, why didn't you ever speak up when Jessica was orchestrating our exclusion from family vacations? Because I was focused on my own problems and assumed family social arrangements weren't my responsibility. I thought Jessica was handling vacation logistics while I handled financial planning, but apparently we were both making terrible decisions about things that actually mattered. There was a long pause before Brad continued, his voice growing quieter. Susie, I need to ask you for something, and I hate that I'm in a position where I have to ask family for help. What do you need? I need to know if there's any way my children can still join the family vacation, even if Jessica and I have to stay home. They're innocent in whatever conflicts exist between adults, and they've been looking forward to spending time with Emma and Tyler for months. The request revealed how completely Brad understood the justice behind his family's exclusion while prioritizing his children's well-being over his own pride. Brad, your children are welcome at Serenity Shores anytime. They don't need their parents' approval to visit their cousins. What about Jessica? Is there any possibility of reconciliation that could include her in family gatherings? That depends entirely on Jessica's willingness to acknowledge how her behavior has affected my children and to make genuine changes in how she treats people. She's not good at acknowledging mistakes. Then she'll need to learn, because my days of accepting family treatment that hurts my children are permanently over. After Brad hung up, I sat in the resort's owner's office, processing the cascade of revelations that was about to transform our family dynamics. Harold's recognition of the property name would spread through adult family networks just as rapidly as Emma's excitement had spread through the children's communication channels. By tomorrow, everyone invited to the mystery vacation would know that Susie Harrison, the family member who'd been excluded for financial inadequacy, now owned the most luxurious resort any of them had ever experienced. But more importantly, Jessica would learn that her systematic exclusion of my family had backfired spectacularly, leaving her children invited to luxury vacations while she remained excluded from gatherings she'd spent years controlling. The phone rang again, and Harold's familiar voice brought the warmth that comes from genuine family affection, untainted by financial calculations or social manipulation. Susie, my dear, I just heard the most wonderful news from my grandson. Is it true that you've purchased Serenity Shores Resort? It's true, Harold. Oh, my dear girl, I am so proud of you and so ashamed of how our family has treated you over the years. Patricia Blackwell's resort has been legendary among my retirement community friends for its elegance and hospitality. Harold, I want you to know that your kindness to Emma and Tyler over the years has meant everything to us. Those children are precious lights in our family. Anyone who couldn't see that was blinded by priorities that don't matter in the grand scheme of life. His voice grew emotional as he continued. Susie, I need to tell you something that I should have said years ago. I've known about the beach house exclusions, and I've known they were wrong, but I didn't speak up because I was afraid of creating family conflicts that might affect my access to my grandchildren. Harold, you don't need to apologize. Yes, I do. I prioritized my own comfort over justice for your children, and that was cowardly behavior from someone who should have been protecting all the grandchildren equally. The conversation revealed how many family members had witnessed our exclusion while remaining silent to protect their own positions within Jessica's vacation arrangements. Harold, all of that is behind us now. What matters is the future we create together. My dear, you've given our family an opportunity to rebuild relationships based on love and respect, rather than financial calculations and social manipulation. I don't think you realize how transformative this gift really is. After hanging up with Harold, I walked through the resort's elegant corridors, seeing the property with new eyes. Tomorrow, the family members who'd been kind to my children would begin arriving for a vacation experience beyond anything they'd ever imagined, while the people who'd excluded us would learn what it felt like to be left out of gatherings they desperately wanted to attend. Emma and Tyler's dream of building sandcastles with their cousins was about to come true on their own private beach, and their mother's childhood fantasies of vacation inclusion had evolved into something far more powerful, the ability to create gatherings where love and kindness determined access to privilege and luxury. The call from Jessica came at 6:30 the next morning, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. Susie, we need to talk immediately. I've been up all night trying to understand what's happening with this vacation situation, and I need answers. I was sitting on the resort's main terrace with my morning coffee, watching dolphins play in the surf beyond our private beach. The irony of Jessica's desperation wasn't lost on me as I enjoyed the peaceful luxury she'd spent years denying my family. What do you want to know, Jessica? I want to know how you went from struggling to pay for basic living expenses to purchasing the most exclusive resort on the North Carolina coast without anyone in our family knowing about your financial situation. Her voice carried the sharp edge that comes from discovering that foundational assumptions about reality have been completely wrong. I hired a private investigator, Susie, Linda Shaw from Charlotte Investigative Services. Do you know what she found? My stomach tightened. I hadn't expected Jessica to take such drastic measures to research my background, but her desperation was apparently driving decisions that revealed how completely our family's power dynamics were shifting. Jessica, you hired a private investigator to research your own sister. I hired a professional to help me understand how someone I've been supporting financially could suddenly afford to purchase multi-million-dollar properties while deliberately excluding me from family gatherings I've been organizing for years. Supporting financially? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb with me, Susie. I know about Mom's prescription medication payments. I know about Harold's physical therapy bills. I know about the college savings accounts that have been mysteriously funded for my children through anonymous bank transfers. The blood drained from my face. Linda Shaw had uncovered financial generosity I deliberately kept secret to avoid family complications and resentment. Jessica, I don't know what you think you've discovered. I've discovered that my sister, who I've been treating like a charity case for 5 years, has been secretly paying for family medical expenses, education costs, and support services while allowing everyone to believe she was struggling financially. Jessica's voice grew more agitated as she continued. The investigator's report shows that you've been sending anonymous payments to cover Harold's arthritis treatments, Mom's heart medication, and orthodontic work for my children. You've been supporting our family while we've been excluding you from family gatherings because we thought you couldn't afford to participate. The scope of Linda Shaw's investigation was more comprehensive than I'd anticipated. She'd traced financial transactions I deliberately obscured through multiple bank accounts and anonymous payment services. How much do you know? I know that your graphic design business includes contracts with Fortune 500 companies that pay you more in annual retainers than Brad makes from his car dealerships. I know that you own intellectual property rights that generate passive income in 12 countries. I know that you could have purchased vacation homes for every family member and still had money left over for investment portfolios. Jessica's breathing was becoming irregular as the full magnitude of her discoveries sank in. But most importantly, Susie, I know that you've been anonymously funding improvements to Mom's beach house through Patricia Blackwell's property management company. You've been paying for maintenance upgrades and repairs on the vacation property we've been using to exclude you from family gatherings. This revelation was the most devastating because it showed how completely I'd been subsidizing my own exclusion through misguided family loyalty. Jessica, why does any of this matter now? It matters because I've spent 5 years treating you like a burden who needed protection from embarrassment while you've been secretly supporting everyone's lifestyle and covering expenses that would have been impossible for the rest of us to afford independently. Her voice broke as the emotional impact hit fully. God, Susie, I've been so cruel to someone who was keeping our entire family financially stable. I convinced Mom to exclude you from vacations while you were paying for the property maintenance that made those vacations possible. Jessica, I chose to help family members because I love them, not because I expected anything in return. You chose to help us while we chose to humiliate you. Don't you see how devastating that is? I've been teaching my children to look down on their cousins while their education savings accounts were being funded by the aunt I told them wasn't successful enough for family social events. The conversation revealed how completely Jessica's understanding of our family dynamics had collapsed under the weight of financial realities she'd never bothered to investigate. Susie, the investigator, also told me something else that's been keeping me awake for 2 days. What? She told me that Brad's business failures have been partially cushioned by your anonymous support. When his dealership accounts were in danger of default last year, mysterious payments appeared that kept him from losing everything immediately. I had hoped Brad would never learn about those transfers which I'd made through business connections to avoid direct family complications. You saved my husband's business while I was telling people you didn't have a real job. You kept my children's education funding secure while I was teaching them to see Emma and Tyler as less privileged cousins. Jessica's voice dissolved into tears that carried years of accumulated guilt and shame. How could I have been so wrong about everything? How could I have convinced myself that excluding you was protecting the family when you were actually protecting all of us? Jessica, you made decisions based on information you thought was accurate. No, I made decisions based on assumptions I never bothered to verify because it was easier to believe you were struggling than to acknowledge that my own insecurities were driving cruel behavior towards someone who was actually more successful than I was. The honesty in her voice was more complete than anything I'd ever heard from her before. Susie, I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest with me. What do you need to know? I need to know if there's any way to fix what I've broken. Is there any possibility that you could forgive me for treating you so terribly, or have I destroyed our relationship permanently? The question hung in the air while I processed 5 years of systematic exclusion against this morning's revelation of desperate remorse. Jessica, forgiveness isn't something you can purchase with recognition of past mistakes. It's something you earn through changed behavior and genuine respect for people you've hurt. What would that look like? What would I need to do to prove that I understand how wrong I've been and that I want to rebuild our relationship properly? I looked out at the ocean where Emma and Tyler would be swimming with their cousins in a few days, no longer excluded from family privileges, but welcomed as honored guests at their own family's resort. Jessica, that's something you'll need to figure out yourself. But I can tell you that my children's well-being will always be my first priority, and anyone who wants to be part of their lives will need to treat them with consistent love and respect. Susie, please. Can we meet somewhere to talk about this in person? I need to see you face to face and try to explain how sorry I am about everything. Jessica, I'm pretty busy with vacation preparations right now. Vacation preparations? You mean for the gathering I'm not invited to? I mean for the family vacation that includes people who've treated my children kindly. And there's no way for me to be included in that. Not this time, but there will be future opportunities for people who demonstrate that they understand what family loyalty actually means. After Jessica hung up, I sat on the resort terrace feeling a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Her investigation had revealed how extensively I'd been supporting family members who excluded me, but it had also forced her to confront the cruelty of her behavior in ways that might create genuine transformation. Tomorrow, the family members who deserved vacation privileges would begin arriving at Serenity Shores Resort, while Jessica remained excluded from gatherings she'd once controlled. But for the first time in our relationship, she understood that her exclusion was a consequence of her choices rather than a result of circumstances beyond her control. The justice felt both necessary and heartbreaking, but my children would never again doubt their value to our family or believe that vacation privileges had to be earned through financial contribution. The call came at 11:47 that night, Mom's voice shattered by tears and panic in a way I'd never heard before. Susie, honey, I need your help. Something terrible has happened and I don't know what to do. I sat up in bed, instantly alert, despite having been deeply asleep. In 40 years, Mom had never called me crying or admitted she needed help with anything. Oh, Mom, what's wrong? I've been evicted from the beach house. The property management company terminated my lease effective immediately, and they've changed all the locks. I can't get inside to retrieve my belongings or prepare for next week's vacation. The timing was exactly as Patricia had planned. Mom was discovering her loss of vacation property at the precise moment when family members were preparing to join my resort gathering. Why did they terminate your lease? They said something about irreconcilable differences in property maintenance standards, but that doesn't make any sense. I've been an excellent tenant for 5 years. I always pay on time, I keep the property immaculate, and I've never caused any problems. Mom's voice grew more desperate as she tried to explain circumstances she didn't understand. So the property manager, someone named Patricia Blackwell, left a message saying that my rental arrangement no longer meets their company standards and that I have 48 hours to remove personal belongings under supervised conditions. Patricia Blackwell. Mom still didn't realize that her old business partner was orchestrating this revenge after 30 years of waiting for the perfect opportunity. Mom, did you recognize the name Patricia Blackwell? Should I? She's just some property management person who's apparently decided to ruin my vacation plans for no reason I can understand. The fact that Mom didn't connect Patricia's name to their business history suggested either deliberate forgetfulness or complete dismissal of past conflicts she'd considered resolved in her favor. Ah, Susie, I need to ask you something, and please don't think I'm being presumptuous. What do you need? I heard from Harold that you've organized some kind of family vacation gathering for next week. I know we haven't always seen eye to eye about vacation arrangements, but I'm wondering if there might be space for your mother in whatever accommodations you've secured. The request felt surreal. After years of claiming space limitations while excluding my family, Mom was now begging for inclusion in vacation plans she knew nothing about. Mom, where did you think I was planning to host a family vacation? I assumed you'd rented some budget accommodation that could fit everyone. I never imagined you could afford anything elaborate, but I thought maybe with everyone contributing costs, we could work out something that included the whole family. Her continued assumption about my financial limitations revealed how completely she'd accepted Jessica's narrative about my business inadequacy. Mom, I didn't rent vacation accommodations. Oh, well, whatever arrangements you've made, I'm sure we can figure out space for one more person. I'm not picky about sleeping arrangements, and I could help with cooking and cleaning to earn my keep. The offer to earn her keep was particularly painful because it showed how desperately Mom wanted inclusion while still not understanding that her exclusion was a consequence of her behavior rather than a space limitation. Mom, I didn't rent accommodations because I purchased Serenity Shores Resort. Silence. Complete absolute silence that stretched so long I wondered if the call had disconnected. Mom, are you there? Did you just say you purchased Serenity Shores Resort? Yes. Serenity Shores Resort, the luxury property that costs $800 per night for basic rooms. Yes. Susie, that's impossible. That property is worth millions of dollars. It's one of the most exclusive vacation destinations on the entire East Coast. I'm aware of the property's value. How could you possibly afford to purchase something like that? I thought your design work was just small freelance projects that barely covered your living expenses. Mom's voice was growing higher and more confused as she tried to process information that contradicted everything she thought she knew about my financial situation. Mom, you've been misinformed about my business success. Well, misinformed. Who misinformed me? I thought Jessica kept me updated about your work situation because she cared about your struggles and wanted to help when possible. The revelation that Jessica had been actively feeding Mom false information about my financial struggles added another layer to the exclusion conspiracy that had shaped years of family gatherings. Jessica hasn't been accurate about my business achievements. What do you mean she told me you were doing graphic design work for small local businesses and struggling to make ends meet as a single mother? Jessica told you that because it justified excluding my family from vacation gatherings. The truth is that my business includes major corporate clients, international licensing agreements, and revenue streams that exceed most people's annual salaries. But if you're financially successful, why didn't you ever say anything? Why did you let us believe you were struggling? Because I didn't realize that your vacation exclusions were based on assumptions about money, rather than simple space limitations. Mom's breathing became irregular as she processed the implications. Woes, Susie, are you telling me that you could have afforded to join family vacations all along, but we excluded you because Jessica convinced me you couldn't afford to participate? That's exactly what I'm telling you. Oh my God, what have we done? Mom's voice dissolved into tears that carried the weight of years of misguided decisions and lost opportunities for family connection. Susie, I am so sorry. I thought I was protecting you from embarrassment about financial limitations. Jessica said it would be cruel to put you in situations where you couldn't afford the same activities as other family members. And you believed her without ever asking me directly. I believed her because I wanted to avoid difficult conversations about money and because I trusted her to understand your situation better than I did. The admission revealed how completely Mom had abdicated responsibility for family relationships by allowing Jessica to control information and make decisions about inclusion and exclusion. Mom Jessica has been manipulating family vacation arrangements to benefit her own social preferences while using fictional financial concerns as justification. You mean she deliberately lied to me about your financial situation so I would exclude your family from vacation gatherings? Yes. And while I was excluding you, based on those lies, you were actually successful enough to purchase luxury real estate that none of the rest of us could ever afford. Yes. Mom's silence returned, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. Susie, what kind of mother excludes her own daughter and grandchildren from family gatherings based on lies told by someone who was jealous of their success? A mother who trusted the wrong person to provide accurate information about her children's lives. I've been such a fool. I've lost years of vacation memories with Emma and Tyler because I was too lazy to verify information and too willing to let Jessica make decisions that should have been mine. Mom, what's done is done. The question is what happens moving forward. Moving forward? Susie, is there any chance that you could find space for me in your vacation gathering? I know I don't deserve inclusion after excluding you for so long, but I'm hoping you might be more generous than I was. The request hung in the air while I considered whether Mom's recognition of past mistakes was sufficient foundation for immediate reconciliation. Mom, the resort has plenty of space, but space was never the real issue. What was the real issue? The real issue was respect for my children and recognition of their value to our family. Emma and Tyler have spent years believing they weren't good enough for family vacations, and I won't put them in situations where they might feel unwelcome or judged. Susie, I promise I will treat Emma and Tyler like the precious grandchildren they are. I've missed so much time with them, and I want to make that right. Mom, making things right takes more than promises. It takes consistent behavior over time that proves you understand how much damage was done. What would that look like? What do I need to do to earn a chance to rebuild relationships with you and the children? That's something you'll need to figure out yourself, but I can tell you that my children will never again be excluded from family gatherings, and anyone who wants to be part of their lives needs to treat them with unconditional love and respect. Susie, please, I'm begging you. Don't let my mistakes cost me the chance to know my grandchildren properly. I'll do whatever it takes to prove that I understand how wrong I was. Mom, this vacation includes people who've been consistently kind to Emma and Tyler. Maybe next time there will be room for people who can demonstrate that they've learned what family loyalty really means. After Mom hung up, I sat in my resort owner's suite processing the devastating phone call that had revealed how completely our family's power dynamics had shifted. Mom's desperate plea for inclusion in vacation plans she'd once controlled showed how thoroughly Patricia's revenge had succeeded. But, more than revenge, Mom's call had forced her to confront the consequences of trusting Jessica's manipulative information while failing to maintain direct relationships with all her children and grandchildren. Tomorrow, the family members who deserved vacation privileges would arrive at Serenity Shores Resort while Mom remained excluded from gatherings that could have included her all along if she'd prioritized love over convenience and truth over gossip. The first car pulled through Serenity Shores Resort's elegant gates at 2:30 Friday afternoon, and I watched from the main lodge's wraparound porch as Harold emerged from the passenger seat with the kind of wonder that comes from encountering unexpected beauty. Uncle Frank was driving with Aunt Carol in the back seat, pointing excitedly at the oceanfront villas and infinity pool that seemed to merge seamlessly with the Atlantic beyond. Even from a distance, I could see their amazed expressions as they processed the luxury that surrounded them. Harold moved slowly with his walking cane, but his face radiated joy as he took in the manicured gardens, private beach access, and architectural elegance that exceeded any vacation destination our family had ever experienced. "Ah, Susie, my dear girl," Harold called as he spotted me on the porch. "This is absolutely magnificent. I had no idea such places even existed, let alone that our family would have access to something so beautiful." Carol rushed up the porch steps with tears in her eyes, pulling me into a hug that carried years of accumulated affection. "Honey, I don't understand how this is possible, but I am so proud of what you've accomplished. This resort is like something from a dream." Frank stood beside his car, shaking his head in amazement. "Susie, I've been in real estate development for 30 years, and I've never seen property this exceptional. The attention to detail, the location, the amenities, this represents generational wealth." More cars began arriving as the afternoon progressed. Cousin Michael's family pulled up in their minivan with teenage children who immediately started taking photos of everything around them. The twins, Sarah and Samantha, emerged from their parents' sedan looking like they'd stepped into a fairy tale setting. But the most meaningful arrival was Brad's children, who came running across the resort's main courtyard, calling for Emma and Tyler with genuine excitement about reuniting with their cousins. "Aunt Susie," Madison shouted as she reached the porch. "Emma was right. This really is a princess castle by the ocean." Hunter, Peyton, and Reagan followed close behind their faces, bright with anticipation about vacation activities they'd been discussing for days, through cousin phone calls and text messages. Emma and Tyler appeared from the resort's game room, where they'd been waiting with barely contained excitement for their cousin's arrival. The reunion between the children was everything I'd hoped for. Pure joy untainted by adult conflicts or social hierarchies. "Come see our suite," Emma called, grabbing Madison's hand. "It has a balcony where you can watch dolphins swim by, and a bathroom with a bathtub big enough for 3 people. Tyler led Hunter toward the beach access stairs. "Wait until you see the private beach. There are tide pools with hermit crabs, and the sand is so soft you can build castles that don't fall down." Watching the children reconnect as equals rather than categorize relatives brought tears to my eyes. For the first time in their lives, Emma and Tyler were hosting cousins at their own vacation property, rather than hoping for invitations to other people's gatherings. The resort staff, trained by Patricia for exactly this kind of family, welcome appeared with refreshing beverages and information packets about available activities. Their professional warmth made everyone feel immediately comfortable while highlighting the luxury service that would characterize the entire week. Harold accepted a glass of iced tea and settled into one of the porch's comfortable wicker chairs, his expression growing thoughtful as he surveyed the scene. "Susie, I need to tell you something that I should have said years ago." "Oh, what's that, Harold?" "I've known about the anonymous payments that covered my physical therapy costs. My insurance only covered basic treatments, but somehow additional funding appeared that allowed me to receive specialized care that kept me mobile and independent." His voice grew emotional as he continued. "I suspected the money came from family, but I never investigated because I was afraid of creating obligations I couldn't fulfill. Learning that it came from you while you were being excluded from family gatherings makes me ashamed of my silence about vacation arrangements I knew were wrong." "Harold, you don't need to apologize for accepting help you needed." "Yes, I do. I prioritized my own comfort over justice for your children, and that was cowardly behavior from someone who should have been protecting all the grandchildren equally." Carol joined the conversation with her own confession. Susie, I also received anonymous support. When Frank's business was struggling 2 years ago, mysterious payments appeared that covered our mortgage when we were facing foreclosure. She looked around the resort with new understanding. You were supporting multiple family members while we were excluding you from vacation gatherings. How could we have been so blind to what was really happening? Frank walked up from examining the resort's architectural details. Susie, I need to ask you something as someone who understands property values. What did this resort cost? Less than you might think because of special circumstances involving the previous owner. Even with special circumstances, this property represents millions of dollars in real estate value. You've achieved a level of financial success that most people never reach, while our family was treating you like someone who needed charity. The conversation was interrupted by excited shouts from the beach, where the children had discovered the resort's collection of kayaks, paddleboards, and snorkeling equipment. Emma was explaining the dolphin watching schedule to her cousins, while Tyler demonstrated proper technique for finding intact seashells in the tide pools. Aunt Susie, Peyton called from the water's edge, can we really use all this stuff whenever we want? And Guanyo, can we have campfires on the beach at night? Everything here belongs to our family now, I called back. You can enjoy whatever activities sound fun. The phrase, our family, seemed to resonate with everyone on the porch. For the first time, we were gathering at property that belonged to us, rather than hoping for permission to use other people's vacation spaces. As afternoon turned to evening, more family members arrived and went through similar processes of amazement recognition and guilt about past exclusions. The resort staff seamlessly accommodated everyone while providing the kind of professional service that reinforced the luxury experience. But what struck me most powerfully wasn't the property's beauty or the family's impressed reactions. It was watching Emma and Tyler interact with their cousins as confident hosts rather than grateful guests, hoping for acceptance. Mom, Emma said as she brought Madison and Peyton up from the beach to rinse off sand before dinner. Madison asked why Aunt Jessica and Uncle Brad aren't here, and I didn't know what to tell her. The innocent question from children who couldn't understand adult exclusion patterns reminded me that justice often creates its own complications when implemented across family generations. What did you tell her? I told her that sometimes grown-ups have conversations they need to finish before they can join family fun time. Emma's diplomatic response showed wisdom beyond her years while protecting relationships that shouldn't be damaged by adult conflicts. That evening, as 32 family members gathered for dinner on the resort's oceanfront terrace, I realized that we'd created something unprecedented in our family history, a vacation gathering based on love and kindness rather than financial calculation or social manipulation. The empty chairs where Mom and Jessica should have been sitting served as reminders that justice sometimes requires exclusion to teach lessons about inclusion. But the laughter and conversation that filled the warm evening air proved that family gatherings could be richer and more meaningful when built on foundations of genuine respect and affection. Tomorrow would bring a full week of vacation activities that Emma and Tyler would remember forever, as the time they hosted their cousins at their own family resort, where everyone was welcome because they belonged, rather than because they could afford to contribute. The security call came during Sunday morning brunch as our extended family was enjoying fresh fruit and ocean views from the resort's main dining terrace. Resort manager David Martinez approached my table with the professional discretion that marks experienced hospitality staff dealing with delicate situations. Ms. Harrison, we have a situation at the main entrance. Someone named Jessica is demanding access to the property and claiming family emergency circumstances. She's become quite agitated when security explained that she's not on the approved guest list. I could see Jessica's rental car through the dining room's floor-to-ceiling windows, parked sideways across the entrance lane, in a way that suggested either desperation or deliberate disruption of resort operations. She's refusing to leave until she speaks with you directly, David continued. Would you like security to escort her from the property, or would you prefer to handle this situation personally? Harold looked up from his conversation with cousin Michael's teenage daughters. Susie, you don't owe Jessica any confrontations during family vacation time. This gathering is about healing and happiness, not relitigating old conflicts. But through the windows, I could see Madison Hunter Peyton and Reagan standing beside Jessica's car with expressions of confused hope about seeing their cousins. Whatever adult conflicts existed between Jessica and me, her children deserved consideration in how this situation was handled. I'll speak with her briefly in the lobby. Can you make sure the children continue enjoying brunch activities while I handle this? Of course, take whatever time you need. Jessica was pacing the resort's elegant lobby when I arrived, her usually perfect appearance disheveled in ways that suggested sleepless nights and emotional distress. Her designer clothing looked wrinkled, her makeup was smeared, and her hair showed the effects of nervous running of hands through carefully styled waves. Susie, thank God. I've been driving for 3 hours trying to find this place, and I need to talk to you immediately about everything that's happened. Her 4 children stood quietly beside the lobby's fountain, their vacation clothes and hopeful expressions creating a heartbreaking contrast with their mother's obvious desperation. Jessica, this is a private resort during a family gathering. You weren't invited. I know I wasn't invited and I understand why, but I need 5 minutes to explain how sorry I am about everything and to ask if there's any way to fix the damage I've caused. Jessica's voice carried genuine anguish rather than the manipulative charm she'd used during previous conversations. Whatever internal reckoning had occurred since our last phone call had stripped away the defensive justifications that usually characterized her responses to criticism. Please, Susie, I'll say whatever I need to say in front of everyone if that's what it takes. I just need the chance to acknowledge how wrong I've been and to try to make things right. The lobby fell silent except for the gentle sounds of the fountain and distant ocean waves. Jessica's children watched their mother with the kind of confused concern that comes from seeing previously confident adults become vulnerable and uncertain. Mommy, Madison said quietly, why are you crying? I thought we were going to have fun at the beach with Emma and Tyler. Jessica knelt beside her 12-year-old daughter, trying to compose herself enough to provide age-appropriate explanations for adult conflicts that had spiraled beyond anyone's control. Sweetheart, sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that need to be fixed before families can enjoy fun time together. Aunt Susie and I need to have a conversation about some mistakes I made. What kind of mistakes? Hunter asked with the directness that 10-year-old boys bring to confusing situations. Jessica looked at me with an expression that asked permission to explain family conflicts to children who'd been shielded from the truth about vacation exclusions and financial manipulations. I made mistakes about being fair to your cousins Emma and Tyler. I didn't include them in family activities the way I should have, and now I need to apologize and try to make things better. Peyton, who at 8 years old shared Emma's age and innocent optimism, brightened at the possibility of simple solutions to adult problems. If you apologize, can we all play together on the beach? That depends on whether Aunt Susie thinks my apology is good enough, sweetheart. Jessica stood and faced me directly, her voice gaining strength as she prepared to make the kind of public acknowledgement she'd avoided for years. Susie, I need everyone in your family gathering to hear this, because my mistakes affected everyone who's been invited to this vacation. Jessica, you don't need to make public confessions. Yes, I do. My behavior has been cruel, manipulative, and based on jealousies and insecurities that I disguised as family protection. I convinced Mom to exclude your children from vacation gatherings because I was threatened by your success and afraid that my own inadequacies would become obvious through comparison. Her voice grew stronger as she continued, as if speaking these truths aloud was providing relief from years of carrying guilty secrets. I lied to everyone about your financial situation because I couldn't stand the idea that the family member I'd been treating as unsuccessful was actually more accomplished than I was. I orchestrated exclusions that hurt innocent children because I was too immature to deal with my own feelings of inadequacy. Jessica's public confession was drawing attention from resort guests and staff, but she seemed determined to complete her acknowledgement regardless of who might witness her admissions. I've spent the past week learning about the anonymous financial support you've provided to our entire family while we were excluding you from vacation gatherings. You've been paying for medical expenses, education costs, and property maintenance that benefited everyone except yourself. Her voice broke as the full emotional impact of her discoveries hit again. I convinced my children to look down on their cousins while their education savings accounts were being funded by the aunt I told them wasn't successful enough for family social events. Madison, Hunter, Peyton, and Reagan were listening with growing confusion as they learned about adult deceptions that had shaped their understanding of family relationships and relative status. "Mommy," Reagan asked in her 6-year-old voice, "does that mean we were mean to Emma and Tyler?" Jessica knelt again to address her children directly. "It means Mommy made bad choices that hurt your cousin's feelings, and now I need to find ways to make up for those bad choices." "Can we start by saying sorry to Emma and Tyler, Briggs?" Madison asked with the practical wisdom that children bring to relationship problems. "If Aunt Susie thinks that would be appropriate, and if Emma and Tyler want to hear apologies from us." I looked at Jessica's children, seeing genuine remorse and confusion about family dynamics they'd never fully understood. Whatever sins their mother had committed, these kids were innocent victims of adult manipulation who deserved opportunities to build authentic relationships with their cousins. "Your children are welcome to join the vacation activities anytime they want. They don't need your permission or my approval to spend time with Emma and Tyler." "What about me? Is there any way I could earn inclusion in family gatherings, or have I destroyed that possibility permanently?" The question hung in the resort lobby while Jessica's children waited hopefully for answers that would determine whether their family relationships could be repaired or would remain fractured by consequences of adult behavior. Jessica, earning inclusion means demonstrating through consistent behavior over time that you understand what went wrong and why it can never happen again. What would that look like? That's something you'll need to figure out yourself. But I can tell you that my children will never again be excluded from family gatherings, and anyone who wants to be part of their lives needs to treat them with unconditional love and respect. Jessica nodded slowly, her expression showing acceptance of conditions that would require fundamental changes in her approach to family relationships. "Can I at least spend today trying to show Emma and Tyler how sorry I am? Not as a vacation guest, but as someone who needs to make amends for past behavior." I considered the request while watching her children's hopeful faces and thinking about the vacation gathering that was continuing on the terrace behind us. "You can spend today participating in family activities as someone working to rebuild relationships that were damaged by poor choices, but this week belongs to people who've been consistently kind to my children." "I understand. Thank you for giving me any chance at all, Lay." As Jessica's children ran ahead toward the terrace where their cousins were finishing brunch, I realized that confrontations sometimes create opportunities for genuine healing when they force people to acknowledge truths they've been avoiding. The next few hours would reveal whether Jessica's remorse was sufficient foundation for rebuilding relationships, or whether justice required more extensive consequences for years of systematic cruelty disguised as family protection. The family meeting that would determine Jessica's future access to vacation gatherings took place Sunday evening on the resort's main terrace, as sunset painted the ocean in shades of gold and coral. I hadn't planned to hold a formal discussion about consequences and reconciliation, but Jessica's public breakdown had created momentum that required resolution. Harold had requested that all adults gather after the children finish their beach campfire activities, explaining that family healing required honest conversations about patterns that had damaged relationships for years. Before we discuss anyone's future inclusion in family events, Harold began, his voice carrying the authority that comes from being the family's respected elder. I think we need to acknowledge some uncomfortable truths about how we've all contributed to problems that hurt innocent children. Jessica sat at the edge of the group, her posture suggesting someone prepared to accept whatever judgment the family rendered. Her afternoon with Emma and Tyler had gone better than I'd expected, with genuine apologies and careful attention to treating the children as valued family members rather than charity cases. "I've been thinking about this situation all day," Carol said, "and I realize that several of us witnessed the vacation exclusions without speaking up to protect Emma and Tyler." Frank nodded in agreement. "We all knew something was wrong with the beach house space limitations, but we chose comfort over confronting difficult family dynamics." "That's exactly right," Uncle Richard added. "We benefited from vacation arrangements that excluded other family members while telling ourselves that intervention wasn't our responsibility." The conversation revealed how many adults had recognized the injustice of our exclusion while remaining silent to preserve their own positions within Jessica's controlled vacation hierarchy. But now we have an opportunity to rebuild family relationships based on love and fairness rather than manipulation and exclusion, Harold continued. The question is how we structure those relationships to prevent similar damage in the future. I looked around the group, seeing family members who'd accepted vacation privileges while my children were excluded, but who'd also genuinely loved Emma and Tyler when given opportunities to interact with them directly. "I've been thinking about consequences and reconciliation all week," I said. "Justice requires accountability, but healing requires opportunities for people to demonstrate changed behavior." Jessica straightened her expression, hopeful but cautious about whatever conditions might be attached to potential reconciliation. "Here's what I've decided. Future family gatherings will be structured to ensure that everyone understands their value and role in our family relationships." I looked directly at Jessica. "You can earn your way back into family vacation invitations by working here at the resort. The housekeeping department needs additional staff, and the experience would help you understand service industry work and the importance of treating all people with respect." Jessica's face showed surprise, but not the indignation I might have expected from someone who'd spent years believing that manual labor was beneath her social status. "You mean I could work here and spend time with the children while earning the right to participate in family gatherings?" "Exactly. You'd receive fair wages for honest work while learning humility and demonstrating commitment to rebuilding relationships through actions rather than promises." Frank leaned forward. "What about Brad? He's been passive rather than actively cruel, but he's allowed family exclusions to continue without intervention." "Brad can work in resort maintenance and groundskeeping. His business experience could be valuable for property management while teaching him appreciation for physical work and teamwork." Harold smiled approvingly. "Those arrangements would give Jessica and Brad opportunities to earn family inclusion while contributing meaningfully to property that benefits everyone." "What about Mom?" Carol asked. "She's genuinely remorseful about the vacation exclusions, but she also enabled Jessica's manipulation for years." I had been dreading this decision because it involved the most complex relationship dynamics and the most fundamental questions about forgiveness and accountability. Mom will need to demonstrate genuine change in her approach to family relationships before she's welcome at gatherings that include my children. Her exclusion from this vacation is consequences for years of choosing convenience over fairness. "But she could potentially earn her way back into family events," Carol asked hopefully, "if she proves through consistent behavior that she's learned what went wrong and why it can never happen again." Jessica spoke for the first time since the discussion began. Susie, I accept your terms completely. I want to work here and prove that I understand how badly I've treated people who deserved my respect and support. The work will be real work, Jessica. Cleaning guest rooms, changing linens, scrubbing bathrooms. You'll be supervised by staff who expect professional performance regardless of your family connections. I understand. I want to learn what real work feels like and how to treat people fairly regardless of their job responsibilities. Harold's expression showed deep satisfaction with arrangements that balanced justice with opportunities for redemption. What about the children during this transition period? He asked. Madison, Hunter, Peyton, and Reagan are always welcome here as honored guests. They shouldn't suffer consequences for their parents' mistakes, and they deserve opportunities to build genuine relationships with Emma and Tyler. The relief in Jessica's voice was obvious as she realized her children would maintain family connections regardless of her own working arrangements. How long would the work requirement last? She asked. Until you've demonstrated through consistent behavior that you understand what respect and humility actually mean. That could be months or years depending on your attitude and effort. Carol reached across to squeeze Jessica's hand. It sounds like you're being given a real chance to rebuild relationships while learning valuable lessons about family loyalty. I'm grateful for any chance at all, Jessica replied. I know I don't deserve generosity after how I've treated everyone. Harold stood slowly, his expression thoughtful, as he looked around the group gathered on the terrace with ocean waves providing peaceful background sounds. I think what Susie has created here is something our family has needed for years. Accountability combined with opportunities for genuine reconciliation based on changed behavior rather than empty promises. When would the work arrangements begin? Frank asked. Next month, after everyone has had time to process these changes and Jessica has arranged childcare that allows her to commit to consistent employment. Jessica nodded eagerly. I'll start making arrangements immediately. I want to prove that I'm serious about changing how I treat people and rebuilding relationships properly. As the family meeting concluded and people began returning to their suites for the evening, I realized that justice had taken a form I hadn't anticipated. Instead of permanent exclusion, we'd created a system that required accountability while providing pathways for redemption through demonstrated respect and genuine effort. Emma and Tyler would grow up knowing that their family valued them enough to establish consequences for people who treated them poorly, while also creating opportunities for reconciliation when those people proved they'd learned essential lessons about love and respect. The working arrangements would transform Jessica and Brad from entitled vacation guests into people who understood the value of honest labor and service to others. Most importantly, they would demonstrate to their own children that family privileges are earned through character and kindness rather than inherited through birth or maintained through financial status. Watching Jessica say goodnight to her children before driving back to her hotel, I saw a woman who understood that the path to family reconciliation would require fundamental changes in her approach to relationships and her understanding of what real success actually means. 1 year later, I stood on the same resort terrace where we'd held that difficult family meeting, watching Emma and Tyler lead a group of cousins in building an elaborate sandcastle village that sprawled across 20 feet of pristine beach. The scene represented everything I'd hoped to achieve when I first purchased Serenity Shores children who felt valued and included, creating memories that would last their entire lives. Jessica approached from the housekeeping building, where she'd just completed her morning shift, her uniform neat and her expression carrying the quiet confidence that comes from meaningful work well done. The transformation in her appearance and demeanor over 12 months of resort employment had been remarkable to witness. Good morning, Susie. The Sullivan family in Villa 3 mentioned how much they appreciated the extra towels and beach umbrellas we provided yesterday. It feels good to know that our work makes their vacation experience better. The pride in Jessica's voice when discussing housekeeping responsibilities would have been unimaginable 18 months ago when she dismissed service work as beneath her social status. But learning to take satisfaction in providing excellent hospitality had changed her perspective on work relationships and personal value. "How are you feeling about the transition to assistant manager responsibilities?" I asked. Nervous but excited. David Martinez has been an excellent teacher about resort operations, and I think I'm finally ready to help coordinate guest services and staff training. Jessica's promotion from housekeeping to management represented earned advancement based on demonstrated competence and attitude rather than family connections. Her journey from entitled vacation guest to respected resort employee had taught lessons about humility and accomplishment that no amount of inherited privilege could have provided. The staff meeting this afternoon will cover our expansion plans for the event planning services. I continued, "Your insights about family gathering logistics could be valuable for developing wedding and reunion packages." I'd love to contribute to those discussions. Working with families who are celebrating important milestones has shown me how meaningful these gatherings can be when everyone feels welcome and valued. Brad appeared from the maintenance workshop, his work clothes dusty from repairing deck railings damaged during the previous week's storm. Like Jessica, his transformation from luxury car dealer to skilled craftsman had revealed talents and satisfaction he'd never known existed. "Morning meeting in 15 minutes, he called to Jessica. "We need to review the irrigation system improvements before the landscaping crew arrives." The casual interaction between my sister and brother-in-law reflected working relationships built on mutual respect and shared responsibilities, rather than the financial stress and social manipulation that had characterized their previous marriage dynamics. "Brad, how are the business planning discussions going with Marcus Thompson?" I asked. "Really well. He thinks there's potential for a resort maintenance consulting business that could serve other luxury properties along the coast. Jessica and I are learning skills that could translate into independent success if we decide to eventually leave Serenity Shores." The possibility of Brad and Jessica building their own business using knowledge gained through resort employment represented the kind of redemptive growth that made their working arrangements worthwhile for everyone involved. Their children had thrived during the year of transition, spending summers at the resort, while their parents worked swimming and playing with Emma and Tyler as genuine equals rather than hierarchically arranged relatives. The working arrangements had eliminated financial stress while providing stability and purpose that benefited the entire family. Harold approached from his morning constitutional along the beach, his mobility improved by access to resort amenities and proximity to family members who cared about his well-being. At 79, he'd found new energy through regular interaction with grandchildren who valued his stories and wisdom. "Beautiful morning for sandcastle construction," he said, settling into his favorite porch chair with a cup of coffee. "Those kids are building something that looks like it could house actual royal families." Patricia Blackwell emerged from the resort's east wing where she'd spent the year in comfortable retirement, while providing occasional consultation about guest services and property management. Her presence at family gatherings had added unexpected richness to our relationships while completing her own journey from revenge toward reconciliation. "The Henderson wedding this weekend will be our largest event since you took ownership," Patricia said. 80 guests for a 3-day celebration with full catering and entertainment services. Your team is ready to provide the kind of luxury experience that builds lasting reputation. The resort's success as both family gathering place and commercial venue had exceeded every financial projection, while providing employment and purpose for family members who needed opportunities to rebuild relationships through meaningful work. "Patricia, how are you feeling about the memorial scholarship announcement?" I asked. "Deeply honored that your family foundation will fund business education scholarships in my name. Using resort profits to provide the opportunities for young entrepreneurs feels like the perfect legacy for someone who spent decades building and rebuilding business ventures. The scholarship program represented another layer of meaning for the resort's success, creating educational opportunities for young people while honoring the complicated relationship between Patricia and our family that had made everything possible. Carol and Frank arrived from their morning beach walk, their daily exercise routine enabled by year-round access to resort amenities that kept them active and healthy during retirement years. The yoga instructor mentioned that her classes are becoming popular with resort guests, Carol reported. Several people asked about extending their stays specifically to continue the wellness programs. And the art workshops that Susie leads twice monthly are booking up weeks in advance, Frank added. Combining creative instruction with luxury accommodations seems to appeal to guests who want meaningful vacation experiences. The diverse programming that had developed around resort operations reflected everyone's contributions to creating a destination that offered both relaxation and personal enrichment for guests and family members alike. Mom appeared from the main lodge where she'd been helping coordinate breakfast service as part of her gradual reintegration into family activities. Her working relationship with resort staff had taught her appreciation for hospitality work, while proving her commitment to changed behavior through consistent actions rather than words. The Morrison family from last weekend sent a thank you note specifically mentioning how much they appreciated the personalized attention they received during their anniversary celebration. Mom reported, "They've already booked next year's getaway and recommended us to 3 other couples." Mom's pride in contributing to guest satisfaction reflected genuine transformation from someone who'd once prioritized social status over service to others. Her year-long probationary period was nearing its end, with family relationships rebuilt through demonstrated respect and humility. "Mom, are you ready for the family meeting this afternoon about permanent inclusion in vacation planning?" I asked. As ready as someone can be who spent years making terrible decisions about family priorities. I hope I've proven that I understand what went wrong and why it can never happen again. The afternoon meeting would formally end Mom's exclusion period based on 12 months of behavior that proved her commitment to treating all family members with equal love and respect. Emma ran up from the beach, her hair wet with ocean water and her face bright with excitement about the sandcastle project. "Mommy, come see what we built. It has towers for princesses and bridges over the moats and secret tunnels that connect to the dolphin watching platform." Tyler followed close behind, carrying a bucket full of shells that would decorate the castle's exterior walls. "We found perfect conch shells for the throne room decorations," he announced proudly, and Madison designed a flag system that shows which princess lives in each tower. The children's elaborate construction represented hours of cooperative creativity between cousins who'd learned to value each other as equals, rather than judge worth based on financial circumstances or family hierarchies. "The castle looks absolutely magnificent," I said, following them toward the beach to admire their architectural achievement. As I walked across the sand, where my children played with cousins who now understood that family gatherings should include everyone, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this moment of healing and hope. 18 months ago, Emma and Tyler had been excluded from family vacations while secretly saving their allowance money to help purchase hotel rooms near beaches they weren't allowed to enjoy. Today, they were confident hosts at their own family resort, creating memories with cousins who loved them unconditionally. Jessica had transformed from a manipulative sister who orchestrated exclusions based on jealousy and insecurity into a dedicated resort employee who understood that real success comes from serving others with excellence and humility. Brad had discovered satisfaction in honest work and skills he'd never known he possessed, while their children had learned that family relationships are built on love and respect rather than financial status or inherited privilege. Mom had proven that people can change fundamental behaviors when they understand the consequences of their choices and commit to growth through action rather than promises. Most importantly, our family had learned that vacation gatherings are most meaningful when everyone feels valued and included, when children can build sandcastles without wondering whether they belong, and when adult conflicts are resolved through justice that creates opportunities for genuine reconciliation. The resort itself had become profitable beyond all projections while providing employment for family members, scholarship opportunities for deserving students, and luxury experiences for guests who appreciated genuine hospitality, combined with oceanfront beauty. But the most valuable outcome wasn't financial success or family reconciliation, or even the children's joy in finally belonging to vacation gatherings they dreamed about for years. The most valuable outcome was the life lesson we'd all learned about the difference between earned privilege and inherited entitlement, between temporary success built on manipulation and lasting prosperity built on character and service to others. As the sun set over Serenity Shores Resort, painting the ocean in colors that matched Emma and Tyler's sandcastle flags, I realized that purchasing this property had given my family something more precious than luxury accommodations or financial security. It had given us the opportunity to rebuild relationships based on what really matters, love expressed through actions, respect demonstrated through consistency, and family bonds strengthened by ensuring that every child knows they belong unconditionally to something beautiful and lasting. Looking at the children playing together on our private beach, while adults who'd learned valuable lessons about humility and service worked together to maintain the paradise that sheltered their growth, I understood that the greatest wealth isn't money or property or social status. The greatest wealth is a family where everyone knows they are loved, valued, and permanently included in the joy and memories that define what home really means. Have you ever had to make difficult decisions about family relationships when people you love have treated others poorly? Sometimes the hardest part of creating positive change is establishing consequences that teach important lessons while still leaving room for healing and growth. I'd love to hear about your own experiences with family dynamics and how you've navigated situations where justice and forgiveness had to work together. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more stories about families learning to choose love over convenience and character over status. Don't forget to share this with anyone who might need to hear that. Sometimes the people who exclude us from their tables end up discovering that we've been preparing our own feast all along. Thank you for taking this journey with my family, and I hope your own family gatherings are filled with the kind of unconditional love and respect that every child deserves to experience.